Welcome back to another episode of the Blockburner Podcast. I'm your host, William, always here with your co-host, Iman.
What's up, dude?
And on the sticks, we got TJ.
Hello.
And finally, joining us today, we got the CEO of Emblem Vault, Jake Gallen. Thank you for joining us, dude.
Dude, long time coming, guys. I mean, we've been in communication for what, almost a year and a half now? 2 years at this point?
Almost 2 years.
Love your guys' show, by the way. Big fan. I've watched a lot of them. You guys have done great work.
Yeah, appreciate it, dude. I think last time we were on your
yeah, we've been on your show twice now, I think.
Yeah, this is like during like the Bitmap beginning stages, right? Where everybody was kind of questioning like what the hell, how does the metaverse have any like place within the Bitcoin ecosystem?
It's like, you guys are still in the metaverse?
Right. Yeah, that alone. And then like how can you actually execute on something like that as with such a rigid and dinosaur-esque platform as Bitcoin, right? But here we are, a year and a half into the future. Bitmaps are still around. The ecosystem is developing, right? But there's a lot of new things happening as well outside of the context of that. Like, the AI sector has expanded quite a bit since then. Back then, it was basically only Bitensor as far as like what we knew.
Yeah.
Like a year and a half to 2 years ago. That's kind of like what piqued our interest is like the intersect between AI and crypto. And the Bitcoin ecosystem, I think, is a lot more mature now than what it was back then. Like now we got runes. Now we got like a develop to tap protocol. Like there's a lot of these things happening, right? So give us your background, dude, for everybody who's new to Emblem Vault. Because I know you have like some historical NFT background as well, too, which I've always been interested to kind of like learn more about. You can kind of break that down and then maybe segue into like, what's your involvement in the Bitcoin space?
Yeah, so I think my crypto story is actually pretty unique in terms of where I currently sit today. I found Ethereum in 2016 on Wall Street Bets Forum on Reddit. It was called the Ethereum Project at the time. I just graduated college and I found it very interesting, the idea of smart contracts. And I didn't buy it at the time because to me, I didn't realize that you could actually buy it. I thought just it was smart contracts technology. So I started following it. And at the beginning of 2017, a friend had approached me about an altcoin project they were working on and said something about Bitcoin. And from that day on of January of 2017, I've really just been in the industry every single day, trading for the most part, basically ran the portfolio up in 2017, lost everything, literally every single Bitcoin that I had earned and lost it all in a rug pull. And so I had to start back all over again. But I always believed that the industry was going to be basically the largest one across the planet, because this idea of just financializing the internet to me was like such the obvious thing once I started researching it. Really my breakout in terms of, I guess you could say, the professional side of things or the content creator side was through historical NFTs. In 2020, I had started my own podcast. It was called Jake's Guest List. And that's the episode that I had you guys on in the very, very beginning. And it was actually a Vegas-based podcast of just like interviewing entrepreneurs and different people in the city when COVID happened. Previously, I was working in the nightclub and day club space for 10 years in Vegas. And so at one point in my life, I owned an antique store with my father. That was my first business that I had in 2018. And this idea of historical NFTs emerged at the beginning of 2021 with this thing called the Mooncat Rediscovery. And to me, that was just like my big aha moment because I had a background in it. And to me, digital antiquities just completely made sense. And so I really dove into the sector. And Adam McBride and Leonidas were actually in this industry as well, or this market. So that's how we all became friends. We ended up doing a podcast together for a few years before Leo did the Ordinal show. And I ended up going really all in on Mooncats. And it actually led me to selling 3 of them at Sotheby's auction house during their second ever auction lot at the end of October. There was like 50 different lots, and people like Token Angels and Pranksy and Steve Aoki and Paris Hilton, all these people were in there. And I was just this guy who had 3,000 followers at the time, somehow made my way into this like big kind of credible market, ended up selling all 3. And from there, my brand kind of really blew up and doubled my followers in a day. And I took the podcast that I had of Vegas and basically just pivoted to crypto and saw that as my opportunity to kind of make it into the space. Fast forward, maybe like a year or so, I I independently started researching on how to build a historical NFT marketplace, because this was at the time when OpenSea was starting to get unbundled. And what I mean by that is OpenSea had grown so large. You saw like ENS had popped up, right? They were pulling kind of ENS.vision had popped up. You had these art NFT marketplaces. You had a photography NFT marketplace, and historical NFTs at the time had some of the most valuable NFTs, still does, right? We saw an Etherrock sale for 250 ETH, I think yesterday. And I had reached out to Leo and Adam McBride actually about trying to build one. And Adam also was independently researching how to build this. And Leo said that he didn't want to participate. So Adam and I actually reached out to a few teams about building historical NFT marketplace. Emblem Vault was one of them. And they said, hey, instead of having us build it for you, why don't you just join the team and we'll just do it together? And that happened in the summer of 2022. And then very quickly after Adam and I were brought on to Emblem Vault, we realized that the product itself was much larger than just a historical NFT marketplace. This is a token abstraction layer to where you can take any NFT from any blockchain and trade it on any blockchain. And it was just this like big aha moment where I was like, oh my God, this is probably going to be one of the largest companies in the industry if we're able to grow it effectively.
Yeah.
And when that happened, obviously the ordinals community used Emblem Vault to trade ordinals at first, right? They traded on OpenSea using Emblem Vault. There's like 3,000 ETH in volume. And so I became very interested in the ordinal space. I've been in it since day one. Leonidas, Adam, and I, when we had our show, we interviewed Casey Rodermore like 4 months before ordinals even launched on our podcast. And from then on, dude, it just became like this vision and venture to basically scale Bitcoin through interoperability through Emblem Vault. And it's been an incredible journey. And about 6 months ago or 7 months ago, I was promoted to CEO of the company to really kind of lead that vision to where we want this to go. And I'm sure we'll touch into it for a little bit, but ended up as a Mooncap moderator 3 years ago. And now I'm the CEO of a company that has over 100 million in TVL. It's kind of a wild story.
Hell yeah.
That's great. That's really cool, actually. I mean, I guess we have a similar trajectory. I mean, just a couple of podcasters, like head of a Bitcoin meta protocol, I guess, that people seem to appreciate. So
yeah,
we're not like
we're not too far off away from you, Jake. We're trailing.
Dude,
Podcasters run the internet. I mean, when you look at it, like content creators are kind of the entrepreneurs of the internet, and in crypto, that's definitely exponentialized because you get your voice out there. And that's where I found you guys when you guys were covering Bitmap and some of the early protocols. You guys had like under 10,000 subs at the time, and then really just blew up, and it was able for you to get your voice out. So yeah, totally resonate. It's very important in today's day and age that if you're working in a completely digital economy, then you have to put your voice out there in some capacity. And podcasting just has, to me, the highest reward, because when you look at across the internet, the people who have the most credibility and popularity are all podcasters. I mean, that's how basically Trump got into office, is going on these podcasts.
Yeah, you're welcome, my man.
This was your idea. It all links back to an enchilada dinner, dude. Like
it does.
6 years ago that we had. Just like Will's like, you know what?
I mean, we're just having dinner and we were talking about crypto, and I remember thinking, it's like, man, this is a really solid conversation. It's like, we should just record it, just flip on the switch and put it on the internet.
Yeah, maybe somebody will care.
Yeah.
Nobody did for a while. But
no, nobody did.
Except for us. Like, we think we're cool. All right. So let's just keep it going, right?
Yeah.
But you're right. Like, it definitely has unlocked a lot of doors and opportunities that for sure we wouldn't have foreseen initially, right?
Yeah, and the landscape is kind of switching. I mean, I feel like anyone who does a podcast, you sort of reveal your authentic self, just because you can't. I don't know. I don't think it's very easy to maintain a facade of like some sort of persona.
Yeah. I mean, we saw this play out in like this recent election cycle, right?
Yeah,
I think a lot of people credit like the Joe Rogan experience to Trump's like landslide victory. Some people are saying that, right? And like,
well, and Elon Musk too. So
yeah, but yeah, you're right. So people are starting to understand, I guess, the implications of maintaining that authentic persona, right? Especially in such a high competitive market of attention and interest and such. Like that is like a killer unlock, I think, for
Yeah, Jake. So how do you maintain like your schedule? Is it more like a rigid like here's we're going to record these dates and then the rest of the time we're going to be working on the business, or like how do you organize your life to kind of maintain everything that you're doing?
It takes a little bit of malleability to be able to change and adapt to, I guess, where the business is headed. And it's actually a good question, because when I had you guys on my show about a year and a half ago, that was like my personal podcast. That was the Jake's Guest List.
Hmm.
And there came a time, maybe 5 or 6 months later, where we were like, okay, we have to start a show for Emblem because it's a multi-chain project. So we have to be able to interact with all these different communities. But then I still wanted to grow my personal brand. And so there was this like sacrifice where it's like, okay, I have to basically pause my personal show
Hmm.
to start a new show, which is the Emblem show. And Adam and I, we first started it on it was just one day a week, Friday morning. And now it's 3 times a week. And we do it Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, at 11:30 a.m. Eastern time. And it took us probably 6 months to slowly gravitate towards that. And now that is what we use basically is our funnel and networking opportunity at the end of the day. Like, we don't get like the craziest amount of views on it. We'll get, maybe 50 live listeners like at full, and then we do the live stream as well. But really for us, it's to showcase on two different areas. First is to showcase, who we're interacting with, to show kind of where Emblem is being led towards. And then on the other side, we also use it as a networking opportunity to engage with other individuals and also show to our community that we're all always available. I think that's very important in the crypto space, is that, if you're building something that's very innovative and new, and you guys are very familiar with this with DMT, that you have to be out there front and center. Mm-hmm. And so the show is almost kind of like the center of what we build around nowadays. Like there is no question that unless it's a holiday, we're doing that show Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Because if not, the community will definitely have something to say about us not being available.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting that we've independently come to the same conclusion, like, because that's how we do our show too. Is like we look for interesting projects and we try to get them on just to learn as best as we can. And we really use this show to have our own understanding like locked down for anything that we do. And then a lot of that time like transitions into like part of the business. And so like, for example, we found the metaverse early on in 2019, and then we sort of just like stuck with it just because we really believe the outcome is inevitably going to be the metaverse, even though it might take, another 10, 15 years or whatever. Mm-hmm. And so a lot of what we do with the podcast is for the business development and like networking and all that stuff. So yeah, it's sort of like killing multiple birds with one stone.
Yeah. And then staying at the forefront of all these different vectors of innovation, right? It's because it all does apply, like you're saying, in the context of the metaverse. That's why, what we're seeing with the AI agent sector, I think you're probably noticing a lot of the same things we are, right? Because it's like, it's a couple of inflection points, I guess, have happened recently within the broader ecosystem of crypto. That's kind of like you can't like not fixate on what's happening, and we're all kind of like in this mind experimental stage now. Like, how can this apply to everything everybody's kind of working on, right? Because outside
it's
of
funny, it just
go ahead.
I just had this conversation recently about specifically AI and the teams who are circulating around it. It always seems to be the same, maybe 15 to 30 teams that are always around the same new technologies that are emerging. Yeah. And it comes to a point now where it's almost expected that I'm going to see these 5 teams whenever there's like something that's new. And I think that shows a lot of credibility, to yourselves, to Emblem, and to the other teams that are around it. Emblem's actually kind of now in the center of the AI area. We've taken a big push towards that. Our founder, Shannon, has been building AI stuff for longer than he's been actually building crypto, which goes back to 2012. Wow. And to me, it's the third narrative of this cycle. Yeah. It's started off with, at the bottom of the bear market, it was ordinals. And kind of how I identify meta is that, or whether it's a meta or a trend, meta being short-term, trend being something that's longer term, is seeing it being applied to other chains and people testing it out to see if it works. And I don't know if you remember with ordinals when it popped up, right? You had Doginals, and then you had right Litecoin ordinals and Bellinals, and then people tried to do it on other chains. Same with, I remember they tried to do that with Bitmap as well. On some of these other chains. Then the second trend was meme coins. Meme coins are kind of everywhere now. And to me, it seems like AI is the third one. It's kind of late forming, but now it's being applied on kind of all three chains between Bitcoin, Base on Ethereum, and then Solana.
Yeah, that's a good segue, because for sure it's dominating, and I guess what we've identified as kind of like the sectors of crypto, like at least during the bear market, where we were highly fixated on the Bitcoin ecosystem. It felt like the innovation, the energy, the spark was here, right? And like it was completely dormant elsewhere. I mean, I guess I don't necessarily know if I quantify memes as like an innovation. I think more like the infrastructure around proliferating them and
probably
sustaining the liquidity environments for them. So like there was definitely some innovation there.
Yeah, and the mind shift too with Murad's speech. I think that was like the inflection point.
Yeah, that's more like a social engineering innovation, like just to be able to contextualize the market so well and such, and galvanize a lot of market interest around that.
Yeah,
but it didn't feel like any real innovation was happening on Ethereum. Kind of like what we saw in like 2019, 2020 era, like with early NFTs and early metaverse experimentation, early DeFi. It was nonstop. You couldn't not see like something new.
Yeah.
Right. But this is like the first wave, I think, with the AI agent space, just AI integration across the board, where now, we're starting to talk about like developers again. Right. And like
finally,
the fact that a lot of them are interested in this space. Right. But I guess a question, like based on what you're seeing, because, both of us were highly interested in the development of the Bitcoin ecosystem. How do you see like an interplay between what's happening on Base and Solana and stuff, and what can happen here in the Bitcoin ecosystem, like in context of like the existing infrastructure status that we're at?
So I guess I could start with kind of just like, I guess showing my own bags or kind of what Emblem's doing and kind of how it's related to Bitcoin. So we're building something that's called Emblem AI, which is basically an AI enabled wallet for agents. And so it's actually going through Solana AI hackathon here this week. And then we'll have it live. But we're also building support for Ethereum and Bitcoin as well. So you can basically go to the platform, you can use the dev kit, link up your own LLM to it to do basically on-chain trading for runes, or you can trade ordinals, right? Or you could go do staking platform, or go do staking kind of things on Solana. And that's to me where it seems like all of this is really headed, is that these agents are going to be used for autonomous transactions, whether they're trading on your behalf, right? Or whether you're kind of setting up conditional basis of something like, hey, if dog, increases by 5%, then list this X amount lot size. And then, right, if it decreases by 10%, then go ahead and buy this X amount kind of thing. And I think that's really exciting. For the longest time, the crypto space is we've been basically trying to onboard normies for the most part, when realistically we're going to be onboarding probably complex agents who are going to be the ones doing most of the transactions.
Yeah. So what's the context, or as far as you understand, like setting conditional, I guess, functions like to an AI agent that has like this autonomous ability to execute on trades and stuff? Like, is that like essentially the same thing that like, Wall Street has deployed when it comes to like
algorithms? Yeah,
just bots in the market, just executing on these things? Or like, well, where's that crossing point where you're going from that to something that's new, that has like
more autonomous?
Yeah, more like independent. You don't have to feed it these conditions. And are we actually near to that?
Yeah, I've learned about this because of Shannon. We actually launched an AI agent meme coin project called Tensorium. We used it as an experiment in the degens, picked up and made it graduate within like an hour of launching. So we've been kind of participating, because what I've learned in crypto, I'm sure you guys have learned this as well, is that if you build infrastructure, you need a token alongside it for people to speculate and participate, or else no one's really interested in it. So basically how agents work is there's like a memory that has to be built. And that's how they become, more programmable and more interactive, and they seem to basically understand what's going on. So with the memory of an agent, there's things like identity, there's things like ego, there's like the basis of information that you want to feed them. So you can build an agent, for example, that is a DeFi yield optimizer. So, for example, these are kind of the low-hanging fruit things that I see that's going to happen, and these are the people that we want to use Emblem AI for. Is, hey, I personally don't participate in yield farming and LP because I don't want to have to sit there and manage my position, because of impermanent loss and stuff.
Same.
But if you build an agent who can basically push those buttons for you, then you're probably going to have a more liquid market that's more efficient. And then you can have something that actually combats against MEV. So you could see these agents and MEV kind of things competing with each other on chain, which is kind of interesting. It's like kind of this on-chain wars. And you can build these things that's called swarms, right? This seems to be kind of the popular topic, where you can have a handful of agents that are basically gathering information for you on Twitter, right? Following sentiment or reading on-chain analytics. And then you can have this other department or swarm of agents who are basically doing yield optimization, right? Or buying and selling or staking or, whatever it really is. Mm-hmm. It's somewhat terrifying, to be honest, right? Because if you're just an average trader, you're probably going to get wiped out. But as you mentioned, the stock market is most of that as well, right? The large majority of trading is all algorithmic, but they don't have this key component, which is a memory, to where the algo can make decisions based off of, what the market is telling it. It's just pre-programmed. So I think this is where crypto AI agents will have an upper hand versus kind of what exists on the stock market.
Yeah, that memory part is a huge deal because without that memory, then it's sort of like it's a bot that's trading blindly. And you need to be able to contextually understand like the sentiment of a given sector or industry. Like for the last 4 years, the crypto industry has been getting or receiving missiles from the U.S. government. And so a lot of the times, like a smart AI agent wouldn't like partake in that industry. And so this memory component is probably the most critical thing when it comes to leveraging these AI agents. So what's, how do you like reconcile the threshold between, you control a money in this particular wallet to giving up that control to an AI agent? Do you just kind of like start with, 10 grand and see what it does over like a few months, or how do you, because I'm imagine there's like a critical threshold where.
Yeah. It's kind of the same feeling I get when I step into your Tesla. It's like, what's the threshold of self-driving, like software updates where I actually fully trust this car? Cause sometimes you put on self-driver mode.
Yeah.
And it does like these like jerks, like it wants to run you off the bridge, dude. Like on its own. So like, where's the, for sure we could trust this thing fully with our livelihood, the full broad spectrum of that,
It's a good question. And actually we're going to be testing this in real time in a few weeks here with Tensorium and Emblem AI. This is literally exactly kind of what we've been building this for. We there's some information we haven't revealed yet, which this AI agent will reveal in time. But in short, it's this agent that we have, for example, has 6% of the supply. So we'll feed him, an X amount of the supply initially to kind of see what happens here. Right. I mean, there's always a fear that he's going to market dump, right? So you don't want to give him the entire supply that he's just going to dump on your community. And so this will be initially starting on Solana because that's where all the attention is.
Yeah.
And then we're going to, kind of understand, what's effective, what's not, how does the memory kind of work, right? Shannon's the one that's kind of building this in the back end from the agent perspective. And eventually, if this has success, then we're going to bring it over to base in Bitcoin. And I think the interesting part here then is if you have an agent who can navigate these three kind of, main silos where most of the liquidity is between these three chains, you could get them to do this like arbitrage and stuff, which I think would be kind of like what one of the low-hanging fruits would be, is to kind of pick that up, because there's a lot of arbitrage opportunities on Bitcoin. And if it's just automated, then it's a big W, but it's a big unknown, how effective this could be. From what I'm told, that it should go pretty well, but It's a new space to me, to be honest.
Of course, experimentation is always like it's the way to go.
Yeah,
right?
arbitrage to me that would have been like the first use case for an AI agent, just because you can see it, right? You can see the arbitrage opportunity, and then the AI would just execute on it. But you need a lot of capital to do that, especially in kind of like safer markets, right? Like you could arbitrage Bitcoin and all these different exchanges, but the difference is like less than 1%. But if you have $10 million, then you're talking about making 50 grand on a trade. Right. So 100 grand on a trade easy. So, I mean, that could, that could be like a sustainable business, but you got to have $10 million worth of cash to do that.
Yeah.
So, so what's next after that? It's like, is like the end goal for these AI agents to have like infinite knowledge, infinite sentiment knowledge on like what is happening within the given world to be able to make proper trades? Or like what do you see as end game for like these AI agents?
I think most of the agents are probably going to be companions of the human, right? So we'll have multiple agents who are acting on behalf of us. And I'm going to use this just specifically in the crypto sense. Obviously, we'll have agents who will like help manage our schedules and stuff outside of crypto, but navigating the on-chain world, I think trading is just the one that's center focus because crypto is mostly speculation. But I can pass this question even just back to you is, what would an AI agent be like inside of a metaverse on Bitmap, right? Or like if an AI agent has the ability to, sit inside of the DMT community, read all the conversation, it can then find what's the most practical, DMT or element, I guess, to create, right, which will be most attractive to the sentiment that's based off of, the community. So, I'd love to hear even from your guys' opinion, like what do you think outside of, trading here, because that's obviously that's where Emblem's kind of focused on for now. But you guys are in the metaverse where maybe there's not as much of a financial component on something that an AI agent would do.
Yeah. That's such a good question, and that's something that we've been thinking about a lot. And the way that I think about AI agents is in the context of a job, right? So typically, like you're saying, an AI agent for crypto, it's like trading. It's like just AI, just make me more money. Like here's 10 grand, run with it. But in the metaverse, it's not that. And so I was telling iMan that now with these AI agents, and even like forget the agents, the human bodies within the metaverse, there's more human bodies in the metaverse than there are jobs. All right, there's largely nothing to do like in the context of a Web3 metaverse.
Another word for job meaning like task.
Tasks,
right? Yeah. It's just some activity that requires participation.
Yeah.
For some value output at the end of it.
Yeah.
Right. So that in context of like why you want to discover these verticals and like actually implement them and have them like a persistent part of the metaverse that we're building is because this is like where the retention actually comes from, right?
Yeah.
This is the motivation and purpose that we initially assumed humanity would discover as like, this is what's going to bring us to the metaverse and like keep us there.
Yeah.
But like people are identifying maybe like it actually initializes with like an AI agent workforce, kind of like bringing the liquidity into the ecosystem to attract humans after the fact, potentially.
Yeah.
Right. Definitely wasn't something on my bingo card list. Is like, I thought maybe, after seeing like what Axie Infinity did last cycle, right. Essentially implement these vectors of short-lived economic sustainable activities, right. In the whole labor market of, what were they called? Scholars, right. Within that ecosystem, right. They've built a virtual system where human beings had to perform these tasks in order for it to like expand, right?
Yeah, that was one of the more successful jobs.
Yeah, it onboarded millions of human beings, human agents, I guess, if you will, to participate. But it was short-lived because it had a lot of like unsustainable
economics
outcomes, right? But nonetheless, that was like the eureka moment of like, this is what we feel like is stable grounds and purpose for the metaverse is to unlock more of this. And our original thesis is like, this is good for humanity, right? Like anytime you're working on any kind of technology, I feel like you want to have like this overall ethos of like, we're doing something good for our own species, right? So it's like, how's the metaverse going to do that?
Yeah.
Social media has all these like negative stigmas to it for our mental health and stuff. You could probably extrapolate from that. The metaverse is probably going to do even more damage to our mental health, possibly.
Yeah.
But you start to identify the economics of the metaverse and what that can do as far as like giving economic access to a lot of humans on Earth who don't have that opportunity, like that feels like a major contribution, right?
Yeah, and to kind of close this thought is the ultimate job for the metaverse right now is to build. And so what is AI really good at doing? Building stuff.
That's true.
Right. And so you could, like you're saying, Jake, we're going to have AI companions, and they are the ones who are going to be building out the metaverse, not you. And because they have like contextual awareness of how to do all, different languages of code, right? And it'll be able to build out the environment just by telling it. It's like, I want, a specific theme, or I want this on my parcel, or I want that. And then it'll just do it. It's just, as long as it has credits, it'll actually do it.
Yeah, but I think so there's that. It's the actual understanding of like the application of AI in context of the metaverse, and then how do you interplay that with like the market dynamics of our Web3 ecosystem, right? Like the degenerate side of the market typically is like what onboards the initial waves of liquidity and interest, and you have to kind of like architecture, like
product market fit.
Yeah, the right product market fit, which is not just simply deploying like this AI interface for people to build out the metaverse.
Sure.
It is like token wrapping certain things, like the deployment of these agents is a good example of that. Like it's working.
Yeah.
Right. People are deploying agents on base to essentially become like Twitter reply guys. And it's like, it's working. These are becoming multi-million-dollar.
So what you're
entities.
saying is, you're saying in the metaverse, we're going to have multiple kinds of AI agents. One is like an architect. It'll make a building for you, but then you have an interior designer AI agent, which will populate the inside of your building.
Yeah.
And then you're essentially creating these speculative tokens that people can trade based on what you need to get your parcel built.
I guess.
Yeah.
I guess. And another question I wanted to ask you, Jake, is because I think you mentioned your dev he's working on the back end of all this, because that's something we need to do our own due diligence on, is understanding like the customability, I guess, of these different like models that are being leveraged. Like you're saying, to fit in context of like introducing these new vectors of understanding that I don't think you can really plug into anything currently, like as seamlessly as you could for like Twitter, for example. Like a lot of these launchpad platforms, that's like a out of the box feature you can add to your agent, right? It's like you have Twitter presence, and you're connected to whatever model that's aggregating all that data and information, right? So to your understanding, like how do you actually take it to another new vertical, introduce like we're saying, here's the awareness of like the contextual understanding of what can be done in the metaverse, for example, use that data to, execute these new tasks. Like what is the process of that?
So I guess in an AI driven world, APIs are basically the new data, like data is right. The new oil or the gold. So you got to get access to the APIs to feed it the information. And then you just basically kind of gravitate it towards, you have these conversations and give it prompts to, I guess, push it in one direction. But it also, I guess, depends on what your objective is. Like if you look at, the AI space right now, the AI coin space, like 90% of these AIs are just entertainment purely, right? Like people who are buying these tokens that you have these AIs tweeting, there's really no attachment to it, right? There's no glue to it. It's a meme coin per se. So I guess if you look at the metaverse per se here, one of the issues with the metaverse is that there's not enough real users, and the non-users were mostly NPCs for the most part, right? They're basically an AI without the memory component here. So you can actually kind of fill the world up with all these different AI agents with these different types of personalities. And so if you're a world builder, right, if you're a Bitmap landowner, then you'd want to kind of figure out, what's the type of aura or the energy that I want on this land, right? Am I building a Bitmap, or am I building a farm on a Bitmap land, right? Then you kind of want these characteristics to resemble, right, like the type of farmer type person. Or if you're building, a casino, then you're going to try to train these agents, to represent something more similar to like the Las Vegas kind of customary personalities that kind of exist along the strip. And personally, I think that the unknown component of it is really fascinating. It's probably a multi-trillion-dollar industry, to be honest, for those that could crack it. And I think in crypto specifically, it's moving at probably the fastest rate I've ever seen of any sector, because people really realize this, and also the fact that it can train on data and improve. I mean, I think is also really kind of accelerating that. But right now, the sector is really just entertainment. Yeah, it's interesting to see where that kind of goes next, and there's probably going to be dozens of subsectors within the AI space, just as like in crypto, you have NFTs and DeFi, and then even within NFTs, right, you have like Metaverse land, and you have art, and you have collectibles, and you have like gaming and all these different sectors. I think AI will end up being something similar to that.
Yeah. Yeah, I totally agree. Yeah, there's so many different applications, obviously, for this stuff. Like right now, we're seeing it dominate like the social application of it, becoming like competing in the KOL space. And then Will was talking about, the killer thing here is like discovering the sustainable vectors of all this. If we're just deploying essentially meme coins, like masquerading or as agents. So it's like that is the vector, I guess, of sustainability, because there's costs. And if we're talking about the application of the metaverse, there's real cost requirements for it to become like a 3D developer for an entire like ecosystem, right? And there needs to be a way to essentially like funnel revenue for its efforts and stuff. Maybe outside of the idea of like every single agent has to have like it's a fungible token counterpart, and like that becomes, I guess, by leveraging your vaults and stuff, and it has this autonomous ability to essentially self-manage its own cost requirements, right? Yeah. But to add to that, like discovering new, I guess, business models that can like integrate into our like human economy in a sense. So if you become a KOL agent, right? Well, why not? I foresee like, X, Y, and Z crypto startup starting to allocate some of their KOL to these agents, right? Which are, a little bit more
we'll produce tweet threads and
whatever, right?
Everything, yeah.
But okay, so tell us a little bit more about the Rune associated with Emblem Vault, and how does that ecosystem interplay with the Rune's fungible token itself? Like, what is it going to be doing as far as incentivizing what ecosystem behaviors, and also give us like the overall, I guess, context wrapper of like where Emblem AI is going to fit in within the overall landscape. Like, is this a potential virtuals competitor, would you say? Or is it more like just a different infrastructure component that, users in the virtual ecosystem will plug and play with?
It's a good question. And I appreciate you for asking. So last week we announced something called the expansion campaign, Emblem's expansion campaign, that we've been working on for probably a year and a half now at this point. So just a little bit of the backstory. I won't go too deep into it, but after Bitcoin ordinals took off on Emblem at the beginning of 2023, this was a similar situation to what Counterparty used Emblem Vault to do 30,000 ETH in trading volume in 2021. The same exact thing then happened with Bitcoin stamps and Litecoin ordinals and e-scriptions. And so this happened with UTXO based assets about 6 or 7 times, this like product market fit. We decided that we had to basically tear down the entire Emblem 1.0 system and basically rebuild it up from the ground up. And that's what we've spent basically the last year and a half doing. It was very painful, to be honest. There was definitely some risk in terms of the company could fail making this kind of adventure. And, it got pretty close, actually, to be honest. But we're in a good place now. And with that, we had Emblem Vault, the technology. Then we had Coval, this like ERC20 token. Unfortunately, the Coval token pretty much went to zero because we had to basically rebuild everything. We had to detach it from the system. And that was something we were very public about, is that, we had to go through this rebuilding phase, and that, it was unclear what would happen with tokenomics. And we had to remove tokenomics as well because of the SEC. So we had to remove like the burning function and scrap the staking options and things like that. So what we announced on last Thursday, is the expansion campaign. And so with our Emblem 2.0 system, what we can do now is effectively deploy Emblem on every single blockchain. So what this means is that you could take your Bitcoin puppets to Blast, you could take your node monkeys to Solana, you could take you could take your Natcats to Merlin chain or to Stacks, right, or to Tap, even intra Bitcoin kind of interoperability. And with that as well comes non-custodial vaults, to where we've upgraded the system now where it's become a little bit more decentralized, where Emblem doesn't have any participation in the key management of every vault. Because what a vault is, just an NFT with a crypto wallet inside, is essentially what it is at the end of the day. So with that being said, of the expansion campaign, and maybe we even get into the program later, we announced keys, Emblem keys, which we inscribed on, or etched, I should say. We etched it on day one when Runes launched. And it's Rune around like number 5,000. And with this was us monitoring the Rune space to see if Runes would become the go-to fungible token standard, which we expected it was going to. And it's shown that that Runes itself has a decentralized application layer, which is kind of what we were looking for. Whereas BRC20 is kind of what I call vertically owned, where Unisat's kind of like commandeered it to manage it in itself. So why Runes? Like, why did we choose Runes over Solana or Ethereum or anything like that? Is, Emblem has somewhere north of 100 million in TVL, and all of that is NFT volume, or 99% of it, I should say. And of that 100 million, about 80% of that is Bitcoin NFT TVL. And also of our 150 million in trading volume over the last 4 years, about 85% of that is Bitcoin NFTs. So realistically, Emblem's a Bitcoin company. It's just been the ability to take Bitcoin NFTs on Ethereum, because that's what the use was at the time. But what we're seeing now is that users want to take their NFTs to Solana to farm, right? People want to take it to Merlin to do kind of different types of use cases. And we decided the best thing to do was to basically bring Emblem home back to Bitcoin, because the backstory is that actually Koval started on Counterparty in 2016 and left. So Emblem was actually a Bitcoin company before it left in 2019. And with that being said, we needed to basically realign everything to showcase that this is where we're going. And because Emblem is a cross-chain product or a multi-chain tool, one thing that we've seen is that Runes are mostly being used in other ecosystems, right? It's being most trading volumes on an exchange, or it's being bridged to Solana. Some people are also bridging to other ETH2s. So for Emblem, that makes sense, right? If Emblem is on Bitcoin, where you could basically take your CryptoPunk to Bitcoin, right? Or if it's on Solana, where you want to take your Quantum Cat to Solana, we're going to need to be able to have a native token, right? So we're going to need to be able to bridge keys to Ethereum or to Solana. But what you can't do is do this the other way. You can't take a Solana token and bridge it to Runes. That just doesn't exist, and it's just not practical. And the way that we see Bitcoin itself is actually a fundamental principle of Emblem, is that we see Bitcoin as an export chain. What we mean by that is that most of these assets are generally moved out of Bitcoin, whereas Ethereum and Solana is emerging as an import chain where people are moving their assets to that chain. So we chose keys because vault safe keys, right? It plays into kind of the mimetic nature of it. And then the token itself is, we have a year-long kind of token campaign that's inclusive of a points program, and time lock vaults and airdrops and things like that. But once you're able to trade this on chain towards the end of next year, we're going to use the token for basically kind of 2 or 3 main buckets. One of that being premium services for Emblem Vault. This would be things like discounts or bonus features, right? Or premium kind of analytics, whitelists and all these kind of new technologies that'll be coming out over the next few years. And then the next one will be decentralization, which seems to be what most people are interested in. And what we mean by that is, right, you spin up, don't hold me to this, things can change in the near future, but the main idea is you spin up some sort of like node verification network so people can basically stake their keys in this cross-chain kind of node network, to earn, yield basically off of the amount of transactions that are happening in the network. And the reason why I say don't hold me to that is we're a US based company. So right now that's obviously not allowed. People are speculating that that's going to change, right? I think Uniswap is like mostly known for this, is being able to turn on the quote unquote fee button, where you could basically stake your Uniswap token and earn a rev share of all the transactions. Emblem would like to go down that path as well, because we believe that Emblem is going to be basically the crypto, you call it the crypto Amazon, I guess, is what some people like to say, because what it is you're basically taking a digital asset and you're putting it inside of an NFT and shipping it from one blockchain to another, which this is the same thing that Amazon or your postal service or UPS or, shipping containers do, is you're taking an item, putting it inside of a box, and you're shipping it from one house to another, right? Mm-hmm. So it's we believe that Emblem is going to be that go-to platform for NFTs across the entire crypto space. And so that's where keys becomes quite lucrative, because if you look at the overall kind of end this tirade here, I like to look at, I like to use this mental model in crypto to kind of conceptualize what Emblem is. And the way that I use this is that blockchains are countries. I truly believe this. Blockchains are countries. Each country has its kind of own legal system. This would be the consensus mechanism of the blockchain. And within these different countries, you have, states and jurisdictions. These are basically applications and L2s and meta protocols. Yep. And then within the countries, you have items, and these are what the NFTs are. And so with that being said, just like in the real world, right, every country's imports and exports whatever their strengths are. And basically you have to have, you use something to get these items across the countries. And this is what Emblem Vault is what the interoperability space is. It's just a vessel to move an asset from one country to another. And so with that being said, that this is kind of where everything is going with Emblem, is that it's this vessel. And what I see that market cap being, if you take this mental model, you look at the international and domestic shipping industry, is 10% of global GDP, which is about $10 trillion. So if you say that the interoperability space eventually becomes 10% or 5% of the GDP or output of crypto, you're looking at a multi-trillion-dollar industry.
Yeah.
So the mechanisms of transferring between chains, how does it differ from, like, I guess, the standard bridging process? Like, is it much more efficient, cheaper,
or is it the same?
Is it the same? And yeah, like you're saying, potentially, like, there's a network of nodes. What function will that potentially serve, I guess, in like maintaining the system architecture?
It's a good question. So this is going to get a little technical here for a second, but when you look at the interoperability space, there's kind of three methods to move assets across chains. You have bridging, which is the most popular, right? Mm-hmm. And then you have wrapped assets is another one. And then you have vaulting. And Emblem was created in 2016. There's still no competitors. We're still the only interoperable vaulting solution. So similar to like DMT, it's a one-of-one protocol that's not replicated anywhere else. And so with bridging, what you're doing is you're doing either one of two things. You're either doing what's called burn and mint, right? Where you burn the asset and they mint the new token on the other side. Or they do something that's called lock and mint, where you take your asset and it's locked inside of like a multi-sig wallet, and then they issue a new token on the other side. Wrapped assets are kind of similar to like a lock and mint, to where I like to call it custody and mint, right? Like with WBTC or CBBTC. Yeah. You're basically holding your Bitcoin on Coinbase or inside of BitGo, and then they're just issuing WBTC as the ERC20. What we like to call Emblem is a encrypt and mint function, and it works kind of this way. It's a little complicated at first, but if I want to take a rare Pepe, right, like a Nakamoto card, which is the most valuable rare Pepe, and I want to take it to Ethereum in a vault. What you're doing with Emblem Vault is you're tokenizing a wallet and then encrypting the private key on Ethereum. So in this example here, I create a Nakamoto card vault, right? That's for Ethereum. And so in this Nakamoto card vault, or this rare Pepe vault, there's a counterparty wallet inside of it. I'm going to send my Nakamoto card into this counterparty wallet that's inside of this Ethereum vault. And then I'm going to mint it. And what you're doing here is you're taking the private key to that counterparty wallet and I'm encrypting it on Ethereum. And then that private key or that seed phrase is then utilized in basically a node network where the private key is essentially shared between all of these different nodes. With Emblem 2.0, we're using something called Lit protocol. With Emblem 1.0, we use something called Web3 auth. With Lit protocol, it makes it non-custodial where Emblem is not a signer of anything. Before we were one of N signer, now Emblem's no of N. So it makes these vaults custodial. So we can't quote unquote rug you. In that sense, we can't take your private keys. And that's basically how it works. But the cool innovative thing with Emblem 2.0 here is that we're innovating with something called a jump feature, where if Emblem is deployed on Base and Solana and Bitcoin and all these different chains, if I have my Rare Pepe vault on Ethereum and I want to move it to Solana, you basically just one click transaction and now the vault's on Solana because you're just taking the private key and then encrypting it on Solana and attaching a new token to it. So that's from the technical sense. So what we're building here is the ability to take any NFT to any chain within one transaction. And that's what we're going to fully build out over the next year under what's called the expansion campaign.
Dude, that's fascinating. I mean, I have the diagram that you're describing in my head, so I understand like technically how this works, but ultimately you are trading encrypted files from one chain to another, and then the protocol knows how to decrypt that file, which means it has access to the underlying asset, pretty much, right?
Yeah. So I'll try to talk about Emblem 2.0 in terms of the decentralization and then where the central aspects are and then how we want to decentralize it even more with keys. Okay. So with Emblem Vault, right, when you're taking the private key and encrypting it on Ethereum, right, in this example, Rare Pepe Vault on Ethereum, with Lit protocol, they have something that's a very complex TEE system, right? And it's called MPC. It's MPC TSSTEE, right? I'm not joking. It's 3 acronyms all in one. Multi-party nice. Computation, threshold signature scheme that's embodied inside of a trusted execution environment, right? Mm-hmm. I know it's a lot of technical, but basically all it means is that it's taking your private keys and putting it inside of this very encrypted maze so that nobody has access to it.
Yeah.
So Emblem doesn't have any access to any of these private keys. It's all kind of utilizing Lit protocol. There's actually all these kind of Bitcoin layer 1.5s that are popping up, right? Like I think Track is using something similar, Arch Network, OpNet. They all are using TEEs on the back end in some capacity. I think Tap is using IPC. You have Arch Network kind of built their other one. We're kind of basically doing the same thing. We've just been doing it for 4 years. So we've been like, we've been doing TE before TE even existed. And so with that, then if I want to take my Rare Pepe to Solana, you're basically the private key still remains encrypted in Lit protocol. We're just now we're burning the ERC1155 token and just attaching that private key to an SPL token. And so that's how you get to move these NFTs without having any wait time. Because I don't know if you've ever bridged anything, but sometimes it can actually take days to weeks for some of this stuff to happen. So no wait time, immediate interoperability. And it's going to be really excited. It's really kind of cutting edge stuff. And with keys here, I'll just kind of expand on this. So with Emblem, kind of what's centralized still is the vault creation process, right? So basically our front end, right? The way that vaults are minted and burned, Emblem is the only one that has control of that. That's the closed source part. So when in the future here, you would want to create a node network so that users are basically validating that these vaults are being minted and burned and jumped around all these different systems, similar to just basically like what a node network, right, or a miner would do with Bitcoin. And with that, you just basically take the keys, you stake it, right? You build this like complex node network, which there's a few different ways you could do it. And once you basically have that validation network, then you have this system to where the wallets are non-custodial or the vaults are non-custodial. And then you have the vault creation process is then basically validated as well. And so then you have pretty much a cross-chain, I would say as close as possible to a trustless kind of interoperability solution for NFTs across every chain.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. It's important to have that interoperability because I'm assuming the incentive to take one asset from one chain and move it to another, specifically in the context of an NFT, is because there might be more liquidity on that chain. Is that correct? Is that like the dominant motivation to move one asset to another?
Yeah, Emblem have found its product market fit with taking rare Pepes and early Bitcoin, Namecoin, and Dogecoin NFTs and selling them on OpenSea in 2021 because that's where the liquidity is. But what we're noticing now actually is that these use cases are beginning to expand, and some of them are actually not just financial purposes. Like for example, Yuga Labs might want to take 12-fold into other side. So they're going to use us to tokenize 12-fold as an ERC1121. Our biggest, the biggest vault whale, I guess you could say, is 6529 Capital. They have, 8 figures in rare Pepes that are in vaults. And their whole thing is that they just want to be able to show their rare Pepes inside of their open metaverse, right? That was their thing. Like there's no financial component to it. Some people are reaching out to us for a variety of reasons. We have about 5 or 6 grant programs that we've been accepted into that we're going to be deploying on. And all of these chains, the 2 that's public, the other ones you guys will be surprised with. The 2 we've announced is Arbitrum and Merlin. There's about 3 or 4 other ones that are that will be announced later. Merlin and Arbitrum have 2 completely different reasons that they want it. Merlin wants to onboard basically UTXO assets, and they want to get ordinals in there and stamps and some of these assets, right, to increase their TVL. Arbitrum's just trying to get access to the Bitcoin ecosystem. They're just they're kind of just throwing stuff at the wall. They're more of a generalized kind of L2. Whereas some of these other chains, and I'll just hint, they're like culturally relevant chains as an L2. They actually, people be quite surprised that there's a moderate to very high interest in bringing ordinals to their L2s, to their ecosystems. Like it's, I do theorize that over the next few years, there's going to be this battle. If Emblem is successful on executing this vision, where all these different chains are going to offer all these different incentive systems, and you can basically generate yield on the same CryptoPunk or the same Node Monkey. Because I could take my Bitcoin Puppet or my Natcat, and I could go farm it on Blast, and then I could go farm it on Base, right? And then I could go do whatever on Solana, or I could go take it to then go generate points wherever I need to do. And that doesn't exist anywhere. There's nowhere for your ability to basically generate yield on the same NFT, just like you can generate yield on the same Bitcoin, no matter what protocol you go to.
So I have a quick question. So using the Emblem Vault protocol versus using a bridge, if I take those 2 different paths with my 2 different Natcats, and I send them to Solana, are they 2 separate collections, or how do you reconcile the 2 different paths to get to Solana?
Yeah, it's a good question. So basically on Emblem side, and we're going to be working to automate this away in the near future as well. We basically have to kind of white glove it. We deploy smart contracts specifically for each collection on each chain.
Okay.
So if you want Natcats on, let's say, Base, Blast, and Solana, we have to go put a smart contract on Solana, Base, and Blast. Okay. And then we use on the back end, we integrate the jump feature so that you can move the asset. The most complex part about NFT interoperability, and I think this is why no one's really gone down this battle, is the metadata maintenance of it all. Because there's a lot of complexities in all these different systems. And also there's different traits that you have to go find. And if you're in a system like Ordinals where, and this is no discredit to Magic Eden, but they've chosen that their advantage for NFTs is to close source the metadata. Sure. I have to individually go to every single project to go get the traits and stuff and the images. To then, right? So it just becomes this like bigger, right? There's just this bigger moat and then challenge. And Emblem's fortunate that it's found product market fit and has success so that we're able to interact with Magic Eden and all these different people to get what we need. But for somebody who's just coming in and creating a small bridge, it is very difficult to go about in this way if you don't know kind of where to look. And so for Emblem, all we need really is to support a collection. First, we have to add support for the wallet inside of the vault, right? So Taproot, right, for Natcats. Then we just need an explorer to link up to and somewhere to get the metadata. And so once that's in, then we just work with whatever team that we're talking with to say, hey, what chains do you want to be on? Because it's always different depending on what collection we're working with. And then we're just going to go out and deploy them. And over the next year, we're going to be launching a vaulting program, which is like a points program. So that users who can then become familiarized with how to do this interoperability can also be rewarded in keys. Because some collections and creators, their issue is that they have a fungible token on Solana, right? They have 3 NFT collections on like Counterparty and Taproot and ETH NFTs, and they need to kind of bring this all together. And we even have this ability to take one smart contract and apply 4 protocols to it. So if you're an artist and you have 3 different collections on Ethereum, Counterparty, and Ordinals or Tap or wherever it is, we can compile all that data into one smart contract. So you have all of these just trading in one place.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome because that makes it easier for anyone who wants to have access to all these different chains. Just use your protocol, and it's almost essentially natively supported just because you did all the heavy lifting to make it possible.
Yeah, it's truly remarkable. Like Emblem's a team of 5 full-time members, and we just hired 2 developers recently. And our founder Shannon has basically built this entire thing by himself for the most part.
Yeah,
over the last 8 years. Benefit to Shannon is he was a developer at Mastercoin in 2013. So he was a developer at the first ever Bitcoin protocol. So he's really built out, or he's really seen kind of this whole vision happen. He has a lot of experience there. And so with his expertise, and then I guess you'd say like mine and Adam's kind of participation in crypto, it's really helped kind of bring it all together.
Yeah.
And now with the expansion campaign, it's time for us to kind of finally enter this next era of this full ability of interoperability, and kind of try to. I think the biggest friction we're going to run into is actually just like tribalism that exists in some of these communities and some of the chains. It is dissipating over time. And I think, over the next 3 or 4 years, probably will be eliminated for the most part, but it is challenging. And with NFTs, it's really a cultural battle for the most part, which is why I think no one's really kind of gone about it.
Yeah. Yeah, you said a couple of things that really resonated with us. It's the fact that Bitcoin is sort of like the export country. It has like the mass exporting capability. And there's another thing. It's like the Emblem Vault being applied to the metaverse makes a lot of sense too, because to do a metaverse on Bitcoin, you're sort of doing a lot of trade-offs just because you want to maintain the kind of like the value proposition of Bitcoin, but at the expense of a user experience. And so we think that there's going to be the metaverse on Bitcoin, but leveraging different technologies. And I think one of them might be Emblem Vault, just because a lot of the assets that need to be represented in the metaverse don't exist all on Bitcoin, right? They don't all exist on Ethereum, right? And if we're going to have this cohesive kind of metaverse, they need to all exist within the same realm.
Yeah.
But otherwise, we're sort of missing the point. And so I think what you're doing is freaking fantastic. And I really love how you kind of like thought of Emblem Vault from like the first principles perspective, instead of just using bridges and like wrapped tokens. Like you thought about it differently. So that hats off to you guys for really thinking through about all that stuff.
I appreciate it. I have to say, when I joined the team 2 years ago, it took me probably maybe 6 months to a year to really figure out what Emblem Vault is and what's the biggest use case, and trying to understand the interoperability sector. And we're punching a lot further above our weight, right? We've never raised equity capital. Everyone that's quote unquote on the cap table is everyone who works on the team. Whereas our competitors have raised $200 million and have 200-person teams.
Yeah.
But really what makes Emblem special is that it found product market fit through the community. So we didn't have to raise capital. And I think that gives protocols that do this a very massive advantage.
Yeah.
Compared to these that are fundraising, because you're not trying to force feed something down, somebody's throat. They basically, get to use it in their own way. And we'd love to work with you guys in terms of the interoperability and metaverse. Like we've had past conversations with different metaverse operators, and right, a lot of it's importing these different types of assets or these different types of specific uses. But with the metaverse, right, the whole kind of idea is, right, the simple one is, hey, I want to take my game skin from one game to another, right? Like with NFTs, like that was the big pitch in 2021. I could take my, CSGO skin if it was an NFT from here to Call of Duty or whatever. And I think the metaverse in crypto is probably something similar, right? If you have a vehicle, right, even a non-financialized asset like a car or something like that in the metaverse, you're going to want to be able to move that across these different countries. And so we hope to do that. And when we deploy on Bitcoin, maybe in Q2 or Q3, it's going to be interesting because we can use any NFT standard. So we could use Counterparty, Ordinals, TAP, or whatever the Cat VM kind of NFT standard is. And I think that's really exciting, because then you can have intra-operability of moving these Bitcoin assets between these different kind of Bitcoin metaverse. Because with Bitmap, it's still kind of unknown, what's going to be the breakout kind of use case. I was also somebody who inscribed on a blackout. I'm a big Bitmap holder and fan. And, it's still kind of TBD at this point.
Yeah.
So a lot of more experimentation needs to be done.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, and something like Emblem Vault makes a lot of sense when you're applying the application layer to the metaverse, just because we believe from like the metaverse perspective, it needs this economic layer to really make it sustainable for devs to create content. But that content needs to be tokenized, and that tokenization needs to be interoperable with different blockchain technologies, just because you can't really depend on Bitcoin to give users that good experience that they sort of demand and sort of expect. And so you need to have these assets that may be on Bitcoin, but they operate on Ethereum or Solana.
Yeah, and your roadmap kind of aligns, I think, with potentially, so like, activating more like transaction data field indexing specifically for the DMT space, right? Yeah. Which we think is going to be a killer unlock for the Bitmap ecosystem as like a commodities discovery phase, essentially, where we could leverage, pattern discovery within the transaction field as being that Bitcoin native commodity that can be exported to other like virtual economies in a sense, right?
Yeah,
so
100%.
Yeah, I think that will align because, per Benny's like information, that is one of the more complex like fields to support. And I think the next one, like, that we will be focused on, right? So, once that's activated, then all of a sudden parcelization in the Bitmap space makes a lot of sense, right? Because, each of these transactions might be harboring some sort of actual very scarce, very valuable commodity, right? And making this interoperable into different virtual ecosystems makes a lot of sense, right? Therefore, you're like actually applying this value into the landscape abroad beyond Bitcoin, right? So yeah, we're totally aligned. We think the discovery of DMT from Bitcoin is like the real value unlock that we can kind of like proliferate and disseminate elsewhere. And like you're saying, we could build out maybe more like user friendly or leverage the already existing infrastructure to where we still align with the value primitives that are on Bitcoin, but
better user experience.
Still produce something that can actually sustain like a real user base, essentially.
Yeah.
Right? So it's like the perfect like homeostasis, I guess, like the perfect balance that we're trying to achieve. But yeah, I think 6 to 12 months, I think it's something we can achieve this like market cycle.
Yeah.
And really prove out like why Bitmap is like a significant contribution to the metaverse landscape. But yeah, man, definitely hats off to you. I'm really glad we got a chance to like really dive deep into what Emblem is doing. Cause I mean, the interoperability, like the spectrum of importance to that. I mean, it's literally like the end game, I think, of this whole like Web3 experiment.
Yeah. We also believe blockchains are countries.
Yeah. And then like the metaverse is the actual like execution of that,
of said country. Yeah.
That's how we've always felt that. And we mentioned you put out like a graphic a few months ago, like an illustration in a sense. Like, dude, that looks a lot like a metaverse. Right?
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Yeah, man, it's an exciting time, and it's easy to get lost in kind of like the financialization of everything and the speculation. But when you do look at the end game of it, from our perspective and from your guys' perspective, right, it's not as much of the financialization of it as it is the interoperability and kind of the, I guess, normalization of being able to take assets to different chains and being able to essentially do whatever you want, right? Whether you want to use it in a financialized way, or if you just want to use it for some sort of personalization, right? That's kind of like what the metaverse really is. And so, the next 12 months for us is going to be 12 to 18 months is going to be really, really exciting. There are even some components to it that we didn't even mention, but I'd recommend everyone to read the expansion campaign. It's the pinned post on the Emblem account. It goes into a lot of details, and we'll be explaining a lot of information on it. And if there's somebody listening that has a collection and you want to take it to a different chain, or if you're a chain operator and you want to bring XYZ collections to your chain, then just please reach out to us. Right now, it's very much more of like a kind of like a white label thing. We're working to automate that to where people don't even have to communicate with us. You could just kind of deploy your own collections and plug in your own metadata, but that's still a little whiles away.
Yeah, and if anyone watching, for some reason you can't reach out to Jake, reach out to us, and we'll connect you guys. And for sure, this is something that we're going to be exploring too. And it's one of those primitives that will become obvious once like that use case and application is built out, because we're in the middle of creating this infrastructure layer for developers to build out applications. And so that's going to fundamentally need that interoperability. So we're definitely going to keep in touch. Jake, thank you so much for coming on. This has been a great conversation. I love getting into the technical details of this stuff and understanding how Emblem Vault works and a lot of the use cases. For everyone else, all the links will be in the description. Thank you guys for watching, and we will catch you in the next podcast.
Peace.